Oh no, say it ain't so. Another Squirmy Wormy fly tying video on my channel. What is this world coming to? Stay tuned. All right, not much to see here except for another version of the Squirmy Wormy. This is one that's kind of come to my attention over the last couple of years. It has kind of faded out a little bit, being that in a lot of competitive fly fishing events, you're no longer allowed to use Squirmy Wormy material. And because of that, you'll notice not many people are then posting pictures of Squirmy Wormies anymore. But this was one of the last versions that really caught fire because it's very simple to tie and it's really easy to reuse. And we'll talk a little bit about that near the end of the tying. So let me get a clean hook in the vise and we will start this version of the Squirmy Wormy. Another Squirmy Wormy. Pat Smith, you are probably loving this. In my Stonfo Cayman vise, I have a Honic competition hook. This is their H400BL. That BL designation stands for barbless. Tying this in a size 14, which tends to be my kind of preferred size for a high-vis squirmy. And that's kind of the version you're seeing me tie today. This is a jig hook, which means when you have it paired with the appropriate slotted tungsten bead, it will ride hook point up, and that bead is a 3mm. It's fluorescent orange, just kind of a go-to color for this combination. Now, I'm going to be using this H400 hook. It's a little bit different than their 450 in that it doesn't have as wide of a gap. Now, the 450, you've seen it featured in a lot of my videos. One of my favorites, no doubt about it. But I feel like the 400 is one of the strongest hooks in fly tying. And, I believe that you tend to catch a lot of large fish on the Squirmy Wormy. There, I've said it. You catch really big fish on the Squirmy Wormy. So keep that in mind. Well, let's start this one. I'm going to be using some Semperfli 12-aught wax thread. The color is fluorescent orange. My bobbin is a Stonfo Bobtech. I'm basically going to build a little thread dam behind this bead. So I want to butt that thread up right against it. And I'm basically going to wrap until that bead stops moving. Once it stops moving, I can let my thread kind of go down the ramp, kind of pull tight with my bobbin, remove that tag end of thread, and I'm just going to wind down the shank about to the point where my barb would be if this was a barbed hook, somewhere around right there. Now let's grab our holder or our connector or whatever you want to call this. I'm going to be using these Orthodontic Elastics. The size is 1/8 of an inch, medium. The color is just like a tannish light brown. I will give you a link down below in the description if you'd like to buy these. Trust me, there are a ton of different sizes, colors. Other sizes may work a little bit better or worse. This is the one that I've used. I've had success with it. I'd like to play around with some of those colored ones as well, but I think I got enough high vis here that this tan will kind of work pretty well for me. Plus, I can use this if I'm going to be going with a natural color squirmy in smaller sizes. Now, I'll kind of share with you how I fix this, and it's really not rocket science by any means. I'm going to take this elastic, I'm going to make it so the hole is kind of up, and I want to get some thread right in the middle of it. So around, 6, 7 wraps. Then I'm going to bring my thread forward, just kind of about to the point where I had torn off the tag end, and I'm going to grab onto this front piece and pull it forward so I really can apply pressure to it. Once I get it there, I'm going to make it again around 5 to 7 wraps. First 3 or 4, light pressure, then I can start to really just kind of clamp down on it, apply more pressure, make sure it's locked in place. And if you see a little bit of movement, don't worry about it. We're going to kind of fix that here in a moment. Mine shouldn't be moving too much. Now I'll place a couple wraps in front just to make sure everything's kind of orange there to get the fish's attention. I'll place a number of wraps in between just to lock everything down, clamp it in place, and then place a few wraps behind that rear one. I can get my thread back up to the bead, go right into a whip finish. If you want to put super glue or anything like that, you can, but I'm not going to because we're going to be applying a resin right now. I'll grab my scissors, trim that thread, and now let's kind of apply a resin. And here's why. I want to make sure this is secured, immensely to the hook, and also kind of make sure that those fish, as they bite into this and they chew on this, because they do, it's a squirmy wormy, I want to make it a little bit more bulletproof. So I'm just going to grab some Solaris Bone Dry, get the brush out, and I'm going to apply it in a couple different spots. So I'm first going to go the obvious, right in between them. I don't want to get it inside those. Let's go underneath them. I'll get on your side as well. And the trickiest one, if you feel comfortable doing this, I'm going to grab onto the front and just get a little bit in there just to help keep everything secure. And while holding it, I'm just going to grab my UV light and shine it up there for a few seconds. I can release, shine it all over the rest of it. If you notice, I'm shielding my hand so I'm not getting any reflection off the hook, off the bead or anything, just because I don't believe this UV light is great for your eyes. So be smart with this. All right, after I've let that cure for a little bit more than 10 seconds, I am ready for kind of the last step here, and that's getting this squirmy in place. Now I've left this one long, and keep in mind, if you have good squirmy material, you can stretch it. Right now my hands are shoulder length, and I can stretch this that far out. So that's the kind of material I want. If you don't have material that can do that, get a new source for your squirmy material. I get all of mine from Competitive Angler. Now here is the tricky part, is how do you get it in there? Now there's lots of different methods. You can probably grab a bobbin threader, put it through, pull it that way. My preferred method, I have these really cool scissors from Renowned. What I'm going to do is basically place them through that rear one, and then I'm going to open them up. Once I have them open, I can stick the first piece in, slide them back. Make sure you don't push forward because you will jam your fingers. And I'll do it again with the front one. So I'll just slide them in, open them, stick it through, remove. And then now this is kind of the strangest part, because as I pull the front one, you'll notice I can get it to whatever length I want. And in the center, it will almost look like it's stretched out. But don't worry about that. You can just kind of pull on it a little bit, get it back, then determine exactly what your length is going to be. I'll probably trim the front just a hair. I want the rear to be about the same length. I prefer to keep it a little bit longer than shorter. And there is my finished Squirmy Wormy. Now I'll talk a little bit more about this in the next segment. But the one thing that I want to mention, if you look at this and you're like, wow, that is bulletproof. The only thing that can really happen is, because these things are not going to come out, the fish can tear the Squirmy Wormy, and that's without a doubt something that can happen. But what I want to share with you is I bring extra Squirmy Wormies with me whenever I'm fishing. Not the hooks, but just the extra material, because if anything happens to this one, it gets pulled out, it gets torn by fish, I can then just slide a new one in. But be careful, because I was really just, I only had one left. I didn't have all of my Squirmy Wormies with me, and I didn't have a pair of scissors to kind of put in there and open up, and to, I use these scissors again I slide it in and open the scissors, which then expands that elastic. Well, I didn't have those with me. So what I decided to do was to grab another hook. I won't demonstrate this completely right now, but imagine if there's no squirmy in there, and I got this hook in there and I yanked on it. You probably noticed I could really pull that elastic pretty far. Except whenever I was on the water and I was pulling it, it was just stretching it, but it wasn't opening that gap. It wasn't opening the center. So I just kept pulling and pulling and pulling until finally I popped that elastic, and the front piece of elastic no longer, was able to hold anything. So you can definitely tear these. This is not a bulletproof fly by any means, and that's going to happen after you catch a number of fish, so you will have to retie it. However, I love this system simply because as you look at it right now, if you catch, a dozen fish on this, and your Squirmy Wormy does eventually just kind of get trashed, you bring it home, you grab your scissors or whatever tool you're going to use, open it up, slide a new piece in, and you're ready to go again. So now let's change the camera angle a bit, and we'll talk a little bit more about this Squirmy Wormy. The Squirmy Wormy, here we go. Now I better take a step back first and acknowledge that this fly is not for everybody. In fact, I previously tied this on my channel, a different version of it, and I know many people that commented and said that they would never tie or fish the Squirmy Wormy, and they never have. And I also know a population of people that said they would never tie or fish the Squirmy Wormy, and they have, because fish love the Squirmy Wormy. So you have to decide what's kind of in your best interest. And if you're watching this video, more than likely you're at least willing to examine it, to learn a little bit more about it, and to also acknowledge that This is what's great about fly tying and fly fishing. We have all of these different avenues and all of these different paths, and it's okay whichever one we want to take. That is the beauty of these sports that we love. Now, let's get into the Squirmy Wormy and all that fun stuff. So as I mentioned before, I'll put a link down below in the description of the original Squirmy Wormy that I tie, and I still do tie that one, but I love this variation for one simple reason. The fish are going to tear apart your Squirmy Wormy. You're going to catch a lot of fish on them, and that material, as you saw me stretch it before, it stretches really well, but it does get chewed up, and there is nothing worse than retrieving your Squirmy Wormy and you only have a little bit still sticking out. It is the worst thing in the world. So this gives you that option to, take that fly off, kind of put it away, or even maybe re-thread it while you're on the water, which is a really great thing to do. Now, that's going to lead us down this next path. I mean, is that fly tying where we're simply just kind of repositioning or putting back in some rubber material? I don't know. That's a really interesting question. I think it will kind of lead us down various paths, whichever one you want to take. And I would love to hear your comments about this variation down below. Do I use it? Yes. Do I recommend it? Absolutely. It's simple. It saves me time. I don't want to be at my bench tying flies all night in preparation for the next day, and they're just Squirmy Wormies. So by all means, I tie this one, especially in this high vis color. Now let's talk about that. Do I love to tie and fish this in other colors? Absolutely. If I had to narrow my choices, I love just red, I love hot pink, I love a tan brown color as well. And I'll fish and tie this pattern in a variety of sizes, as large as a size 10, the whole way down to a size 20. And what's great about this fly is that fish will eat it in a variety of sizes. You don't always have to have it in that size 14, which tends to be kind of my go-to size whenever I'm fishing in moving water and also in lakes for trout. So kind of keep that in mind. It's not just trout that eat this as well. I've caught largemouth, I've caught crappie, I've caught stripers on this fly before. So there are a lot of fish that will eat a Squirmy Wormy, and you have to decide if you're comfortable even at least chasing those species with this fly on the end of your line. Now let's talk about water conditions and water types in which I prefer to fish this. There's no question about it. If we've had a high water event, the water's starting to come back down, you're starting to get color back into it, then by all means, I am going to be fishing these red, hot pink. But low water situations, go with those dark red, the brown color to make it look a little bit natural. Fish will eat worms just about year round, at least in my experience. And what's great about this pattern, this is one that, whenever they chomp down on a fly, they really reject it pretty quick because they just know it's not real. It just feels very hard. It's just not that right texture that they're used to eating. But whenever they chomp down on a Squirmy Wormy, there's some give, it's rubbery, and it almost buys you a little bit more of a reaction time simply because it could be something real to them. So kind of use that to your advantage. Whenever I think about fishing this, am I going to be using a Euro nymph setup? Absolutely. I prefer to fish this with a second fly, and my reasoning is really simple. They don't necessarily always take the Squirmy Wormy, but I feel like it gets their attention. So I might pair it with a WD-40, or I'll pair it with a sexy waltz or a waltz worm. And I'll catch a lot of fish on that second fly, not necessarily because they're looking for it, but they saw the Squirmy and they thought, no, that's not quite for me. There's something that I'm gonna go after instead. Will I fish it single fly? Occasionally. Dry dropper? Not too much. But by all means, try with another pattern, vary its location, sometimes on the point, sometimes on the dropper. But most importantly, know that it's not going to get down in a hurry unless you have a heavy tungsten bead on it, because it's almost resistant. I'm not saying it necessarily wants to float, but it does not want to get down in a hurry. So kind of think about that and use it to your advantage, especially in other situations. I mean, we're talking about carp as well. This would be a great fly to kind of hang on the bottom whenever carp are cruising by, because it's going to try to elevate a little bit off of that bottom and just show them that movement as well. So there are lots of different situations to fish a Squirmy Wormy. I mean, I'm sure you know a bunch of them as well, and I'd love to hear about them down below in the comments section of this one. Well, thanks everybody for watching this video. And if you'd like to watch more like this, you can check out my website, which is troutandfeather.com. Once you get there, scroll down to the bottom of the homepage, insert your email address, and you can sign up for my monthly updates full of tips, tricks, techniques, even a blog from Matthew Lurdeau of Casting Across. There is lots of information jam-packed into those newsletters. For those of you who are already signed up, thank you. If you have any questions or comments, you can email me at tcammisa@gmail.com. My email address is found down below. And if you're into social media, you can find Trout and Feather on Facebook and on Instagram. I definitely post a ton of stuff on Instagram. I love it. There is no question about it, but YouTube is my home. So thank you for subscribing. Thank you for turning your notifications on. Thank you for the likes. Thank you for whatever else you do. It's been wonderful. I truly appreciate all of the support, and I hope to see all of you soon.